Today we are going to talk about adding and subtracting rational numbers. Here we have the rules for adding positive and negative numbers. The first rule is to identify if the answer choice will be a positive or a negative number. The largest number in the problem tells you the sign for your answer. The second rule is if the numbers have the same sign, positive and positive, or negative plus negative, you just add the two numbers. If the numbers have different signs, a negative plus a positive or a positive plus a negative, you just subtract. Here we have our first example, 21.5 plus 13.25. So we go to rule number 1 and we try to identify if the answer choice will be positive or negative. The largest number will tell us the sign. So the largest number here is 21.5. So we know our answer will be a positive. Now we go to our second rule. If they have the same sign, we just add. Both of these numbers are positive, so we can just add. Now we can do our normal adding strategies by lining up our decimals. And I like to add a 0 just for place value. So now we can add 0 plus 5 gives us 5. 5 plus 2 gives us 7. Bring our decimal down. 1 plus 3 gives us 4. 2 plus 1 gives us 3. So our final answer is 34.75. Here we have our next example, negative 16 plus 9. Now we go to our first rule that tells us if our answer will be positive or negative. So we look at the largest number, which is the negative 16 here, and that will tell us that our answer will be a negative. Then the second rule says if the numbers have different signs, a negative plus a positive, we just subtract. So I always like to go vertical when I add and subtract. 16 minus 9. So 16 minus 9 gives us 7. So our answer will be negative 7. Here we have our third example, negative 1.25 plus negative 5.25. So using our first rule, we look at the larger number, which is the 5.25, and it is negative, so our answer is going to be negative. Then, using the second rule, if the numbers have the same sign, we just add. So we have a negative plus a negative, so we're just going to add them. When I add, I like to go up and down. Five plus 5 gives us 10. 0, carry the 1. 2 plus 2 gives us 4, plus 1 is 5. Bring down your decimal. 5 plus 1 is 6. So we are left with negative 6.5. Our last example we are going to look at for adding is negative 3.7 plus 12. Using our first rule, looking at the larger number, which is 12, we see that our answer is going to be a positive answer. Using the second rule, if the numbers have different signs, a negative plus a positive, we just subtract. So now I'm going to write the problem vertically. You always put the larger number on top in subtraction and the smaller number on bottom. Now if you do not line up the decimal, you will end up getting a wrong answer. So I always put a decimal and a 0 to help me with place value. Now we do 0 minus 7. We can't do that, so we're going to have to borrow. So we borrow from the 2 and it becomes a 1, and the 0 becomes a 10. 10 minus 7 gives us 3. We bring our decimal straight down. 1 minus 3 we can't do, so we have to borrow from the 1. The 1 becomes a 0, and this one becomes an 11. 11 minus 3 gives us 8. So we plug it back into our answer, and we get a positive 8.3. So now we are going to look at rules for subtracting positive and negative numbers. So the first rule says to check the problem to see if it is subtracting a negative number. So if it looks like a double negative, here's our example, 6 minus negative 8. or negative 11 minus negative 4. So the signs will cancel each other out if they're back to back. So the 6 minus negative 8 will become a 6 plus 8. And the negative 11 minus negative 4 becomes negative 11 plus 4. From there, we just use the second rule from adding. If the numbers have the same sign, positive plus positive, or negative plus negative, we just add. If the numbers have different signs, negative plus positive or positive plus negative, you subtract. Here we have our first example of subtracting positive and negative numbers. We have negative 17 minus negative 5. So the first thing we do is we look to see if there is a double negative. So if you look right here, you can see that there is a double negative, minus negative 5. So what we have to do is we have to change it into a positive. So the way I change it into a positive is I just draw a line down this subtraction sign and a line down this negative sign. Okay, if you want to make it a little neater, you can. So now our problem reads negative 17 plus 5. So we go back to our addition rules. If the numbers have different signs, a negative plus a positive, we subtract. So again, I always like to set up my problems vertically. So we get 7 minus 5 gives us 2. 1 minus 0 gives us 1. Okay, now is our bigger number positive or negative? Well, we see that negative 17 is bigger, so our answer has to be negative 12. Here's our second example, 38 minus 14. So we check to see if there's a double negative, and there isn't, so this is just a regular subtraction problem. We have 38 minus 14. Super simple, basic, just like elementary. 8 minus 4 gives us 4. 3 minus 1 gives us 2. So we get 24 as our answer. Our third example reads 25 minus negative 36.8. So we have to check to see if there's a double negative, and I do see one right here. So these signs will cancel each other out. Now, I just like to draw the line right through to make it a plus sign. If you want to make it neater, that's up to you. Then we go back to our addition. When you add the same signs, we just add. So we have 36.8 plus 25. I like to add the decimal and 0 for place value. So now we continue. 8 plus 0 gives us 8. We bring our decimal straight down. 6 plus 5 gives us 11, so we put the 1 and we carry a 1. 3 plus 2 gives us 5, plus the 1 we carried gives us 6. So we get a positive 61.8. Here we have our last example, negative 5.7 minus 0.25. Now this one's a little tricky to explain, so I'm going to use a visual of a number line. So I'm going to draw my number line, and I have 0 here. Negatives go this way. That's our negatives. And positives go this way. Now, when we have a negative 5.7, and we have to take away 0.25, we're going further down this number line. But the negative number is going to get bigger. So since we're going further down the negative line, we need to add the two numbers. So we have 5.7 plus 0.25. I'm going to add my zeros for place value and then add. 0 plus 5 gives us 5. 7 plus 2 gives us 9. We bring our decimal straight down. 5 plus 0 gives us 5. Now, since we have our bigger number, negative 5.7, as a negative, our answer does have to be a negative answer. So we get negative 5.95.